I never thought silence could be louder than a scream, but after Daniel's death the quiet in my apartment grew heavier than any storm, and it was in that silence I discovered the truth that his death was no accident, that the man who once sat across from me at our wedding dinner had been marked by shadows far more powerful than I ever imagined. And in that revelation I felt something fracture inside me, something that could never be put back, for grief was only the beginning and what followed was something darker, something that whispered revenge like a prayer carved into my bones. At first I tried to survive the ordinary way, walking through the city streets, blending in with the crowds, forcing myself into routines that felt like imitations of life, but everywhere I turned the city itself reminded me of him, from the coffee shop where we used to argue over who made the stronger espresso to the park bench where he once read to me from his battered notebook. And yet what haunted me most were not the memories but the lies that kept circling back. The way the police reports were full of inconsistencies, the way his company acted as if they were relieved to bury him quickly, the way faces turned when I asked too many questions, until suspicion became a rhythm, a beat inside my skull I could not silence. I told myself I would not chase ghosts, yet ghosts seemed to chase me. Daniel's voice lingering in half-dreams, whispering about files he had hidden, warnings he had tried to share before his car went off the road on a night that was too clear for accidents. And though friends told me to move on, though family begged me to heal, I began to stitch together pieces of a puzzle no one else wanted to see: bank transactions he never explained, coded messages and emails that made no sense at first but began to form patterns, names that led to doors locked tight. And at the center of it all, a man whose smile had always seemed too polished, Richard Hale, Daniel's superior at the firm, a man who shook my hand at the funeral with eyes colder than marble. I did not go to the police because I already knew their reports were compromised, nor did I share my suspicions with those close to me because they were safer without my secrets. Instead I began to wear masks of my own, Elena the grieving widow by day, Elena the hunter by night, combing through alleyways of information, learning to follow money trails, planting questions in bars where corporate men drank too much, trading kindness for carelessness. And the deeper I dug, the clearer it became that Daniel had stumbled onto something vast, that the company was not simply a business but a machine fueled by blood and silence, and Richard was its engineer. But revenge is not as clean as it looks in the movies. It does not come in a single shot or explosion. It is a slow poison that seeps into your veins until you cannot tell if you are the avenger or the one being consumed. And there were nights I stared into mirrors and did not recognize my reflection, nights where Daniel's picture seemed to accuse me, asking whether this was love or madness, and yet I pressed forward, because once you open the door to vengeance you cannot close it again. It keeps pulling you into rooms darker than the last. I began to infiltrate Richard's world, not with weapons but with whispers, planting seeds of doubt among his allies, leaking fragments of truth to those who could not ignore it, making calls from burner phones in the dead of night, watching as his empire of certainty began to tremble. And though he tried to project power, I saw the cracks in his armor, the way his eyes flickered at meetings when a name was mentioned, the way his guards doubled overnight. And in those small fractures I found my strength, for revenge does not strike with thunder, it creeps like a shadow until its weight is unbearable. Still I wanted him to feel what I felt, not just fear but loss, so I studied his family, his habits, the life he pretended was untouchable, and though I promised myself I would not harm the innocent, the first needed him to understand that nothing he loved could be safe while Daniel lay in the ground. So I left messages only he could decode, photographs slipped under his door, recordings of conversations he thought buried, a ghost made flesh, and each act brought me closer to the edge of becoming something I could not name. For every move he made I had already anticipated, every trap he laid I dismantled, until paranoia became his constant companion. And yet the strangest part of revenge is that it teaches you as much about yourself as it does about your enemy, because while I dismantled Richard's world, I uncovered the depths of Daniel's courage, the sacrifices he had been prepared to make to expose corruption, the risks he had taken alone to shield me from danger. And I realized that vengeance was not only for me but for the truth he died trying to reveal, a truth bigger than Richard, bigger than one firm, a truth tangled with politicians, banks, and corporations, and the more I unearthed, the more I understood that Daniel's death was only one of many. There were nights when I wanted to quit, to let go and disappear, but the city itself seemed to conspire to keep me moving. Its rain-slicked streets reflecting the ghosts of all who had been silenced, its neon lights flickering like signals guiding me forward, and though fear walked with me like a shadow, it became less a weight and more a compass, because I knew the only way to honor Daniel was to finish what he started, even if it meant I would never walk away whole, even if it meant the world would remember me not as a victim but as something darker. Finally the night came when Richard realized who haunted him, when his polished mask cracked wide open and he begged for mercy in the very office where he had signed Daniel's death. And though I had dreamed of this moment, though I had whispered it to myself like scripture, it did not arrive with triumph but with silence, a silence as heavy as the night Daniel died. And in that silence I saw the man for what he was, a coward wrapped in power, a tyrant built on fear, and I gave him no speech, no dramatic flourish, only the justice he had denied so many others, a justice that left the city quieter but never truly at peace. Now I write this not as a confession to absolve me but as a record, so the world will know that Daniel's death was not in vain, that his voice lives in these words, that revenge is not glory but survival, not light but shadow. And though some may call me a monster, I know I am only the mirror of the world that created Richard Hale, a world where silence protects the guilty and vengeance becomes the only language left for the broken. And if you are hearing this, know that every shadow hides a story, and every story holds the power to burn empires down.